4th of October, 1893. Dawn watch. Wind from the south is southwest. Light, perhaps 3 knots. Swell moderate. Sky clear over the point. Visibility good to the west. A fog bank stands to the west at a distance of approximately 8 nautical miles. It runs north and south as far as I can see in either direction. The top of it is even, as though a flat surface had been laid across the sea. The morning sun strikes it, and the western face of the bank glows. It is not moving toward the land or away from it. Light extinguished at dawn at the proper hour. Paraffin consumption for the night, 3 pints and a quarter. No vessels sighted. Asgeir Vatnsdal, keeper, Staffness Point. 4th of October, dusk watch. Wind back to the south, freshened to 5 knots. Swell moderate, sky clear, visibility good. The fog bank to the west is at the same distance as this morning. The light upon it is now from the east, and the eastern face is in shadow, but the shape of the bank is unchanged. The flat top, the long, even running. Light kindled at dusk at the proper hour. Wick trimmed, lens cleaned of salt. No vessels sighted from the tower in the hour before dusk. A V, keeper, 5th of October, dawn watch. Wind south-southwest, 3 knots. Swell light, sky clear. The fog bank stands at approximately 7.5 nautical miles to the west. It has approached during the night by a distance of half a nautical mile. It is otherwise unchanged in appearance. This is not unusual. Fog banks come in. I have seen banks of similar size approach from the west in October before, in October of '89 and in September of '91. And in both cases, the bank moved upon the land within the day, sometimes within the hour, and the keeper at that time prepared the foghorn and the supplementary oil and the sounding board. And when the fog had passed over the point and out across the heath, the equipment was put back to its place, and the duty register recorded the duration of obscuration. It is normal procedure. I will prepare the foghorn after the dusk watch, in case the bank approaches further during the night. Light extinguished. Paraffin 3 pints. No vessels. A V, 5th of October. Dusk watch. Wind has shifted to the southwest, 4 knots. Swell unchanged. Sky clear, with high cirrus to the north. The fog bank stands at approximately 7.25 nautical miles to the west. It has approached during the day by a distance of 1/4 of a nautical mile. This is unusual. The bank's progress, if it is approaching, is slow. A bank advancing under a 4-knot wind from its quarter ought to make better progress, and a bank not advancing under such a wind ought not to advance at all. I do not have a clean explanation for the rate at which it is closing. The motion may be the expansion or contraction of the bank itself rather than its translation. That is, the western edge may be receding while the eastern edge is advancing, with the body of the bank growing wider rather than the bank as a whole moving toward the shore. I cannot see the western edge from here. Light kindled, wick trimmed. Foghorn moved into the lower chamber and the bellows checked. Sounding board uncovered. Supplementary oil drawn from the lower magazine, 2 gallons, and placed beside the lamp. No vessels. A V. 6th of October, dawn. Wind westerly, 2 knots. Swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 7 nautical miles. It has approached during the night by a distance of 1/4 of a nautical mile, the same as it approached during the day yesterday. I observed the bank for some time before recording these notes. I climbed to the gallery of the tower and watched it through the small glass that the previous keeper, Bjarni Olafsson, used for ranging. The glass has a graduated reticle, which I have used to measure the apparent angular height of the top of the bank. The angle has not changed in 3 observations made over the course of 1/2 hour. The bank is therefore not approaching during the period of observation. Its approach is occurring between observations. This is, I think, a thing fog can do. Fog moves with the wind and the wind shifts, and the bank may be advancing slowly during periods of calm and pausing during periods of breeze. And what I have measured this morning is a moment of pause. I will continue to watch. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2 3/4 pints. No vessels. A V 6th of October. Dusk. Wind westerly. Freshened to 7 knots. Swell increasing. Sky overcast to the north. The bank stands at approximately 6 3/4 nautical miles. It has approached during the day by a distance of 1/4 of a nautical mile. The wind has been freshening westerly for the last 6 hours. A bank advancing under a 7-knot westerly wind should make rapid progress. The bank has approached 1/4 of a nautical mile in 12 hours, which is a rate of approximately 1/10 of a knot, a far less than the wind would carry it. I want to record the appearance of the bank as best I can. It is approximately uniform in shade, a pale silver gray, with no streaks or thinness through it. The top is flat and runs at a height which my reticle gives as approximately 700 feet, though the reticle is calibrated for ranging vessels, and I do not trust this figure to better than 100 feet. The horizontal extent is greater than I can measure. The bank runs out of my northern view across the Cape, and out of my southern view past the lighthouse keeper's residence at Walchen, where I cannot see beyond. From the gallery looking due west, the bank fills approximately 50 degrees of the visible horizon. It is large, light kindled at the proper hour, wick trimmed, foghorn ready in the lower chamber, supplementary oil at the lamp. No vessels sighted today. This is the second day without sighting. Vessels normally pass at this season at a rate of 3 to 7 per day, mostly Norwegian fishing craft and the occasional small steamer. I will note absence of vessels going forward. A V 7th of October. Dawn. Wind westerly, 4 knots. Swell moderate. Sky overcast. The bank stands at approximately 6 1/2 nautical miles. It has approached 1/4 of a nautical mile during the night, the same distance again. I have begun to take measurements at midnight as well, when the moon allows. Last night the moon was waning gibbous and rose at approximately 11, and I was able to range the bank at approximately 12:30, when it stood at 6 3/8 nautical miles. From dusk until midnight, the bank advanced 1/8 of a mile. From midnight until dawn, the same. The rate is steady. The bank is approaching at 1/4 of a nautical mile per 12-hour watch. This is a remarkably steady rate. Fog banks do not, in my experience, approach at a steady rate. They approach in surges, in lurches, in the sudden enveloping that gives the foghorn its purpose. This bank is approaching like a clock approaches noon. I want to record one further observation. The bank is the same height it was 3 days ago, the same width within my view, the same shade. If it is closing on the point, it should be growing larger in my visual field. It is not. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2 1/2 pints. No vessels. A V 7th of October. Dusk. Wind westerly, 4 knots. Swell moderate. Sky clearing from the south. The bank stands at approximately 6 1/4 nautical miles. Approach 1/4 mile in the day watch. I have ranged the bank from the gallery using the reticle and from the cliff face at the southern end of the point using a small theodolite that I keep for surveying the boundary stones of the lighthouse property. The two methods agree to within 1/10 of a mile. The bank is at 6 1/4 miles by both instruments. The bank does not appear larger in my field of view than it did at 8 miles. I have measured this with the reticle. At 8 miles, the angular extent of the bank's top above my line of sight at the gallery was a certain figure. At 6 1/4 miles, the angular extent is the same figure. If the bank were truly approaching, it should, by the geometry of the situation, present a higher angular profile. It does not. I considered what this means, and the explanation that fits the observation is that the bank is not approaching the lighthouse. The bank is shrinking at the same rate at which it is approaching, and as a result, it remains the same apparent size at all distances. Its near edge moves toward me, but the bank itself becomes proportionally smaller, so that no matter how close it comes, it always looks the same size as it did when it was farther away. This is a strange thing for a fog bank to do. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels. A V, 8th of October, dawn, wind west-northwest, 3 knots. Swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 6 nautical miles. It has approached 1/4 of a mile during the night. I want to add one observation. I rose at 4 bells of the morning watch, about 2 o'clock, and went to the gallery to range the bank under the moonlight. The moon was setting in the west, behind the bank, and the bank was lit from behind by the moon. The light through it was even. There was no thinning of the bank where the moon was, no patch of brightness, no break. The bank let through a uniform, dim, silvery glow that exactly outlined its flat top and its even body. Fog scatters light in particular ways. A bank lit from behind by the moon should show streaks and pockets of brighter and dimmer obscuration, depending on the local density of the water particles within the bank. This bank did not show such streaks. The light through it was uniform, as though the bank were a solid body of consistent thickness throughout. I am writing this as an observation. I am not claiming it is anything other than fog. I am claiming only that I have not, in my 11 years at this station, seen a bank do exactly this, and I want it noted in the register that I have observed it. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2 3/4 pints. No vessels. A V 8th of October. Dusk. Wind west-northwest. 2 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 5 3/4 nautical miles. Approach 1/4 mile in the day watch. The bank's apparent size in the field of view remains constant. I have measured it again. The reticle reads the same height it has read for 4 days. I have considered today whether the bank is one I should signal about. There is a procedure for unusual atmospheric phenomena which I am to enter into the register and which the inspector reads when he comes in November. I have entered the bank into the register since the 4th, and these entries serve the procedure. There is also a procedure for events of immediate concern, which involves the lighting of a beacon on the southern cliff that signals to the keeper at Reykjanes, who then transmits to Reykjavik. The beacon procedure is reserved for events involving danger to vessels or to the station. The bank has not yet caused either. I will not light the beacon. There is also the question of whether I ought to walk to Falsne, to the home of Petur Vidalin, who is the nearest neighbor and who keeps a small farm on the heath 2 miles east of the point. Petur is not a man of the lighthouse service, but he is a man of long experience with the sea and with the weather, and he has been to my station for tea in the past, and I have been to his. He would be interested in the bank. I have considered going. I have decided not to go yet, because the bank is doing nothing more than approach, and approaching slowly, and I have no urgent matter to discuss, and to walk 4 miles round trip to discuss a fog bank with a farmer would be a poor use of the day's hours. I will see Petur when next he comes for tea, which is generally on a Saturday. Today is a Sunday. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, a V 9th of October, dawn, wind north, 2 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 5 1/2 nautical miles. Approached 1/4 mile in the night watch. The wind has shifted to the north overnight. A north wind across the sea here does not carry a westward bank toward the land. It should push the bank southwest, away from the point and toward the open ocean. The bank has not moved southwest. The bank has continued to approach the point at 1/4 of a mile per watch, regardless of the wind. I am noting this without elaboration. It is what I have observed, light extinguished, paraffin 2 1/2 pints, no vessels, a V 9th of October, dusk, wind north, 3 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 5 1/4 nautical miles. Approach 1/4 mile in the day watch. I will note that I went down to the cliff edge at midday to take a long observation. I sat on the stone where the path turns away from the point, with my back against the cairn that the previous keepers built for shelter from the wind, and I watched the bank for the better part of an hour without instrument. The bank is beautiful. I will record this also. It runs the entire length of the visible western horizon, flat and silver and even, and it is illuminated from above by the autumn light which falls clear from the sky between the bank and the shore. The water between us is calm and dark and reflects the bank's pale wall as a long horizontal band of lighter darkness across the swell. The gulls, of which there have been few these recent days, fly along the line where the bank meets the sea, never crossing into it. They turn at the edge as though the edge were a wall. I sat for an hour and the bank did not change in any visible respect. Its top was flat. Its width was great. The light through it was uniform. The sea ran the same swell, and the wind blew from the north, and the gulls turned at the edge, and the bank stayed where it was for the duration of my observation, and for some distance beyond. I want to be clear in this entry that I am at peace with what I am watching. The bank is doing nothing. It is approaching the point at a rate of half a mile per day, with regularity, but it is not approaching with intent or with menace, and it is not behaving in a way that requires me to take any action other than the ones I am taking. I am keeping the light. I am keeping the register. I have prepared the foghorn. The supplementary oil is in its place. If the bank arrives, I am ready for it. If it does not arrive, I am still keeping the station as I have kept it for 11 years. I want this entry to be in the register so that the inspector, when he reads, knows that I am of sound mind and steady hand. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, a V 10th of October, dawn, wind north, 2 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 5 nautical miles. I want to record one further observation today, which is that the bank's apparent size remains exactly the same as it was on the 4th, when it was at 8 miles. I have now spent 6 days watching a bank approach by 3 nautical miles without growing any larger in my view. The geometry that this requires is one I cannot draw on paper. A solid fog bank, behaving in this way, would have to be losing 2/3 of its mass over the period in question, and yet it shows no thinning, no diminishment, no internal change of any kind. Or it would have to be a bank that was originally extremely large at extreme distance, and is now smaller at closer range, but which had been farther than I had estimated at the start. Both possibilities are odd. One requires the bank to be ablating without trace. The other requires my initial estimate of distance to have been off by an order of magnitude. I have considered the second possibility. If the bank on the 4th of October was not at 8 miles but at, say, 80 miles, the bank's apparent size at that distance would have been the same as it appears now at 5 miles, because the bank itself would have been 10 times as large. This is geometrically possible. It would require the bank to be approximately 7,000 feet high rather than 700, and to extend for approximately 500 miles north to south, which is implausible but not strictly impossible. It would also require it to be approaching at a rate of approximately 10 miles per day rather than half a mile, which my night observations have ruled out. Neither explanation works. The bank is approaching me at half a mile per day. The bank is not changing in apparent size. These two facts cannot both be true unless the bank itself is shrinking. I have not considered until now the third possibility. I will write it here. I will not elaborate it. The third possibility is that what I am watching is not a fog bank. A V 10th of October, dusk, wind north, 3 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 4 3/4 nautical miles. I walked to Valsen today to see Peter Vidalin. I went after the dawn watch and returned by midday. The walk takes a little over an hour each way, along the heath path that runs above the cliff, and then down into the valley where Petur's farm sits. Petur was outside when I arrived, repairing the fence around his sheep pen. He greeted me as he always does and offered me coffee inside. We sat at his table, and his wife Gudrun brought us bread and butter and the coffee. We talked for some time about ordinary things: the price of wool this year, the health of his elder daughter who is married and lives in Keflavik, the news of a Danish ship that ran aground near Sandgerdi in late September. I asked Petur eventually if he had seen the bank. Petur said he had seen it. He said it had been there for several days. He said it had not moved. I said that it had moved. And I said that I had measured it from my station, that it had been at 8 miles on the 4th and was now at 5, and that it was approaching at a quarter of a mile per watch. I described to him the consistency of the rate, the indifference to wind, the unchanging apparent size. Peter listened. He asked one question, which was whether I had eaten properly during the previous week. I told him I had. He nodded. He said, Asgar, from my farm I can see the same bank you see. From my farm it has been at the same distance for 6 days, the same place. It has not approached and it has not retreated. It is at the same distance from my farm as it was on the morning I first saw it. I asked him at what distance the bank was from his farm. He said, approximately 5 miles. I asked him how long it had been at 5 miles from his farm, and he said, since I first saw it, it has not moved. We sat at the table for some time after this. Peter did not ask me further questions. He did not offer an interpretation. He drank his coffee. He cut more bread. After a while he said, Asgir, stay tonight. Gudrun will make supper. The light at the point can be skipped one evening. I declined. I told him I would not skip the light. I said I would walk back and keep the station as I always do. He nodded. He said, come tomorrow if you wish, the day after if you wish. Come whenever you wish, and stay as long as you wish. I thanked him. I walked back along the heath path. The bank, when I looked at it from the path, was where it had been. I cannot say whether it was at 5 miles from the path or some other distance, because I had not previously ranged it from the path. It looked the same as it always does. Flat top, even running, silver gray. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, AV, 11th of October, dawn, wind variable, light, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 4½ nautical miles. I want to record what I have come to understand about Peter's report. The bank is at 5 miles from his farm, and it has remained at that distance. The bank is at 4½ miles from my station, and it is approaching at a quarter of a mile per watch. Peter's farm is approximately 2 miles east of my station. If the bank were a single physical object positioned in the sea at a fixed location, it could not be at 5 miles from his farm and 4½ miles from my station, because the geometry of the two distances would put the bank at different points in the sea depending on which observer it was being measured from. A single bank at 5 miles from Petur's farm, west of him, would be at approximately 3½ miles west of my station, not 4½. The numbers do not match. This means one of two things. Either the bank is not a single physical object, but rather a different bank in front of each of us, with its own behavior relative to its own observer. Or the bank is a single object whose distance is not a fixed property of its position in the sea, but rather a property of the relationship between it and the person observing it. I am writing this calmly because there is no other way to write it. I am not frightened. I am not confused. I am merely reporting what the measurements suggest. The bank approaches me. The bank does not approach Petur. The bank does the appropriate thing for each of us. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2½ pints. No vessels. AV 11th of October. Dusk. Wind variable. Light. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 4¼ nautical miles. I have today opened the keeper's library, which is a small shelf of books in the lower chamber, kept for the use of successive keepers. The library contains the duty manuals, the navigational tables, the lighthouse service correspondence files, and a small number of books on maritime atmospherics that were left by Bjarne Olafsson, who served at this station for 19 years before me. I have read the section on fog phenomena in the Manual Atmospheric Conditions of the North Atlantic Coasts by H. Steingrimmer, 2nd edition, 1881. The manual lists 12 types of fog known to occur in Icelandic waters, each described by formation conditions, typical density, typical extent, typical duration, and typical rate of advance. None of the 12 descriptions match the bank I am watching. The closest match is the Half-Mocha Stora, the Great Sea Fog, which is described as a coastal advection fog of high density and large extent that approaches the shore under a sea-to-land wind. The Half-Mocha Stora, according to the manual, advances at a rate of 2 to 4 knots, and dissipates upon contact with land within 20 minutes to 3 hours. The bank I am watching has not advanced at any wind-correlated rate, has not arrived in any reasonable time frame, and shows no indication that it would dissipate upon arrival. And the manual does not describe a fog that approaches at a constant rate independent of wind. The manual does not describe a fog that maintains constant apparent size across closing distance. The manual does not describe a fog that exists at different distances for different observers. I had closed the manual and returned it to the shelf. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, AV, 12th of October, dawn, wind south, 3 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 4 nautical miles. I have begun today to count the days that the bank has been visible. Today is the 9th day. The bank has approached by 4 nautical miles in 9 days. At the current rate, the bank should reach my position in approximately 8 more days on the 20th of October. I am noting this calmly. I do not believe the bank will reach my position on the 20th. I do not believe the bank will reach my position at all. The bank's behavior does not suggest arrival. The bank's behavior suggests a function, the function of approaching, which the bank performs at a constant rate without the rate's purpose being arrival. This is not a thing fog does. Fog approaches in order to arrive. The arrival is the meaning of the approach. A bank that approaches without intending arrival is not behaving as fog. I am also observing today, for the first time in 11 days, that I have not slept well. I attribute this to the lengthening of the watches as autumn draws on, and to the shortness of the daylight, and possibly to the fact that I have spent more time at the gallery and at the cliff than I usually do at this season, taking ranges and observations of the bank. I will sleep this afternoon for a few hours before the dusk watch. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2 1/4 pints. No vessels. AV, 12th of October. Dusk. Wind south 4 knots. Swell moderate. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 3 3/4 nautical miles. I slept this afternoon for 3 hours. I was wakened by a sound which I took at first for the bell of the entrance. There is a small brass bell beside the lower door, which visitors ring, but which, when I rose and went to the door, was not present. The door was closed and the bell was still, and there was no one outside. I returned to my bed and listened. The sound came again. It was not the bell. It was a low, even sound at the edge of hearing, coming from the west. I went up to the gallery and listened. The sound was like the long-held note of a horn, but very deep, well below the range of any sounding instrument I have heard. It was steady. It did not vary in pitch or in volume. It was difficult to be certain I was hearing it at all and not imagining it. It was the kind of sound that is heard more in the body than in the ear, in the chest, in the floor of the gallery beneath my feet. The bank was at 3 3/4 miles. There was no other source of sound to the west. The sea was calm. There were no vessels and no birds within hearing. I listened for perhaps a quarter of an hour. The sound continued. It did not change. I came down from the gallery and lit the lamp at the proper hour and trimmed the wick and prepared the foghorn for the night, and now I am writing this. The sound is still present. I can hear it as I write. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels. A V 13th of October, dawn, wind south, 3 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 3 1/2 nautical miles. The sound continues. It has continued throughout the night. It is the same sound as yesterday afternoon. Low, even, steady, more felt than heard. It does not change with the watch, with the wind, or with the time of day. I want to record that I find the sound beautiful. I do not write this lightly. I have lived 11 years on this point, and I have heard many sounds of the sea and the wind and the land, and most have a quality of effort to them. The wind pushing through, the surf striking, the call of a bird that requires breath to make. The sound from the bank has no quality of effort. It is a held note that does not need to be held. It is simply present, like the color of the sea or the cold of the air. Paytour came up the path this morning around the time of the dawn watch. He brought bread and a small tin of preserved cod. He came into the lower chamber and sat at the small table, and we drank coffee. Gudrun had asked him to come, he said. She had been concerned that I would not eat properly while watching the bank. I asked Paytour if he heard the sound. He listened for some time. He said he heard nothing. I asked him to come up to the gallery. He came up. We stood at the gallery and I asked him again. He listened for a long time. He said he heard the wind and the sea below, and a gull calling somewhere to the south, and nothing else. I told him the sound was very low and very steady, and was felt as much as heard. He stood with his hand on the railing and concentrated. After perhaps 3 minutes he said, "Asgir, I do not hear it. I am sorry." He stood with me for some time longer. Then he said gently, "The bank is at the same distance from my farm as it was 9 days ago. It has not moved." I said, "Yes, I know." He said, "It is at 3.5 miles from your station." I said, "Yes." He said, "Asgir, the bank is approaching only you." I want to record what I felt when he said this, because it is important to the register that the keeper's state of mind be accurately reported. I felt nothing. I do not mean that I felt numb or shocked or that emotion was suppressed. I mean that the statement, as Paytour made it, was a statement about a matter that I had already understood. The bank approaches me. The bank does not approach Paytour. I had reasoned this out 2 days ago. Hearing it stated by someone else added no new information. It produced no new feeling. I had absorbed the fact already, and the absorption had not been difficult, because the fact was simply what was happening. Peter watched me for some time. He said, "Come down to the farm. Stay with us. Gudrun has prepared the spare room." I said, "Paytour, I cannot leave the light." He said, "The keeper at Reykjanes can be reached. I will send word. And there are arrangements for circumstances." I said, "Paytour, I am not leaving the light. The light is mine to keep. Whatever is happening with the bank, it is not a circumstance that requires me to leave my station. I am eating. I am sleeping. I am keeping the register. I am the keeper." He looked at me. He was a long time looking at me. Then he said, "I will come tomorrow. I will come every day until the bank stops moving toward you, or until you come down to the farm, whichever happens first." I thanked him. I walked him to the path. He went down the heath toward Valsen. The sound continued throughout his visit. He did not hear it. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2¼ pints. No vessels. AV. 13th of October. Dusk. Wind variable. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 3¼ nautical miles. And the sound continues. I have been trying today to determine whether the bank has any feature that distinguishes a near edge from a far edge. That is, whether the bank has perspective. A real fog bank viewed from below would show the underside as the near edge approached, would show the far edge thinning into the sky, would have a foreshortening that becomes more pronounced as the bank closed. The bank does not have these features. It presents the same flat front it has always presented. The top is flat from the angle I see it, and the edge appears to meet the sea at a sharp line, with no curvature, no foreshortening, no underside visible. The bank, in other words, does not look like a three-dimensional object that is approaching me. It looks like a flat image that is being made to appear larger over time without changing its form. And I am not certain what to make of this observation. I record it. Light kindled. Wick trimmed. Foghorn ready. Supplementary oil at the lamp. No vessels. The absence of vessels is now 10 days in a row. This is unusual but not impossible at this season. Weather to the south may have detained the fleet at Sangerdi. A V 14th of October. Dawn. Wind north. 2 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 3 nautical miles. Paytour came again. He brought soup in a covered pot. We ate together at the small table in the lower chamber. He told me Gudrun had made the soup specifically for me. It was lamb broth with barley and root vegetables. It was very good. After we ate, Petur said, Askir, I went to Reykjanes yesterday. After I left you, I went to the keeper there. I asked what he had told the keeper. Peter said, I told him there was a fog bank approaching your station that you have observed for 10 days. That does not behave as fog should behave, and that does not approach mine. I told him you were keeping good register and were sound in your mind, but that the situation was unusual. I asked what the keeper at Reykjanes had said. Petter said, he said he would write to the inspector in Reykjavik. He said the inspector could come and observe the bank and assess the situation. He said the inspector could not come for at least 2 weeks because of the inspection schedule. I said, 2 weeks is acceptable. The inspector is due here in early November in any event. Peter said, Askir, 2 weeks may not be acceptable. The bank is closing, I said. The bank is closing at 1/4 of a mile per watch. In 2 weeks it will have closed by 7 miles. It started at 8. The bank should not exist by then. Petur looked at me. He said, or it should have arrived. I said, it will not arrive. I said this with certainty that I am still examining today, several hours later. I said it because I have come to believe it. The bank has been approaching for 10 days at a constant rate without changing in apparent size, without changing in apparent form, without responding to wind or weather, and is making the deep sound that only I can hear. The bank is not behaving like a thing that intends to arrive. The bank is behaving like a thing that approaches. The approach itself is the bank's complete activity. Peter stayed for another hour. Before he left, he said, I will come tomorrow. Asgeir, I want you to know, Gudrun and I have prepared the room. It is ready when you choose. I thanked him. I walked him to the path. The sound continues. Light extinguished. Paraffin 2 pints. No vessels. AV 14th of October. Dusk. Wind north 3 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 2 3/4 nautical miles. I will note today, for the register, what I have come to think about the bank. The bank is approaching me. It has been doing so for 11 days at a rate of half a mile per day. It has been doing so without approaching anyone else. It has been doing so without the appearance of growing larger as it closes. It has been doing so accompanied by a deep, continuous tone that only I can hear. I do not believe the bank intends harm. I have considered this carefully. The bank has been visible for 11 days during which I have remained at my post, and the bank has done nothing other than approach. It has not exerted pressure on me to abandon my station. It has not damaged the lighthouse, the supplementary equipment, or the surrounding heath. It has not approached the homes of others. It has not interfered with my eating, my sleep, my work, or my visits with Petur. The bank simply approaches and makes its sound, and is otherwise as it has been. I do not believe the bank will arrive. I have written this several times in the register, and I will write it one more time. The bank does not behave like a thing that arrives. The bank behaves like a thing whose entire purpose is the approach. The approach is the bank, and when the approach reaches its mathematical end, when the bank is at 0 distance from me, I do not believe the bank will be at the lighthouse, because the bank has never demonstrated the relationship to physical space that arriving would require. The bank will continue to approach. The distance will simply become smaller and smaller. It will pass through fractions that have no name. The bank will be at 1 nautical mile, then at 1/2, then at 1/4, then at 1/8, and so on, halving forever, never reaching 0. This is a thing I have read about in mathematics. There is a paradox of the Greeks, of a man named Zeno, in which a runner cannot reach his destination because the distance to be covered must always be halved before being completed, and the halving never ends. The paradox is dissolved by the mathematics of limits, in which an infinite series of halving steps can be summed to a finite distance, and the destination can therefore be reached. I believe the bank is not a Zeno paradox that can be summed. I believe the bank is a Zeno paradox that does not sum. The halving will continue. The bank will approach without ever arriving. I will live, for the remainder of my time at this station, with a fog bank closer to me each day, but never reaching me, never enveloping me, never giving me the obscuration that would call for the foghorn or the supplementary oil. The foghorn will remain ready, the oil will remain in its place, the bank will remain visible at a smaller and smaller distance, and the sound will continue, and the keeper will keep the light. I find I am not afraid. I want to record this in the register clearly. The keeper is not afraid. The keeper is keeping the station. The keeper sees what is happening and has formed an understanding of it, possibly a wrong understanding, but a stable one. And the keeper continues with his duties. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, a V 15th of October, dawn, wind variable, light, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 2½ nautical miles. The sound continues. It has not changed in volume, in pitch, or in steadiness. It is, by my best assessment, exactly what it was when I first heard it 3 days ago. I have grown accustomed to it. I am no longer uncertain whether I am hearing it or imagining it. It is simply present. I want to record one observation about the bank today. From the gallery this morning, with the sun in the east and the bank lit clearly on its eastern face, I noticed for the first time that the bank cast no shadow on the sea. A bank of fog lit from the east by a low sun should cast a long shadow across the water to the west of itself. I have seen many such shadows over the years. They run westward in the morning and eastward in the afternoon. They are part of how a bank looks at this hour. This bank casts no shadow. The water to the west of the bank is the same color as the water to the east. The bank stops at its own western edge, and beyond that edge the sea is as the sea is, lit and shadowed by the same sun in the same time of day, with no contribution from the bank. This is consistent with the other observations. The bank does not have an underside, does not foreshorten, it does not let the moon shine through it, does not alter the apparent angular size with closing distance. The bank does not behave like a body of water vapor in the air. It behaves like an image of a fog bank, painted in some way I cannot understand, on the air at a particular distance, and then made to slide closer along the line between itself and me. I write this calmly. It is what I observe. Pétur came early. He sat with me for an hour, and then went down to the heath path again. He has begun to bring me food daily. Gudrun is sending bread, soup, dried fish, a little sugar. I am eating more than I have eaten since the bank appeared. I told Pétur this morning that I am grateful and that I will come to their farm for a meal once the inspector has come and the situation has been formally recorded. Pétur did not press me. He said that the room is ready whenever I want it, light extinguished. Paraffin 2 pints, no vessels. A V 15th of October, dusk, wind variable, light, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 2¼ nautical miles. I will note today that the bank, at this distance, fills approximately 70 degrees of my western horizon from the gallery. At 8 nautical miles, it filled approximately 50 degrees. The angular increase is small. The bank, even at half its original distance, is barely larger to my eye than it was at the start. By the geometry of an actual physical object closing on the observer, the angular size at half distance should be twice the angular size at original distance. 70 degrees is not twice 50. The bank's apparent growth, even now, is far less than approach should produce. The bank is shrinking as it closes. The shrinkage is exactly such that the apparent size grows only modestly. The bank, when it reaches what I have been calling the mathematical end of its approach, the point of zero distance, which it will never reach, would by extrapolation present an angular extent of perhaps 90 to 100 degrees, which is to say a flat silver wall in front of me, filling half my visual field, but standing at the height of the lamp gallery and no higher. It will be a small thing. When it is close enough not to reach, it will be the size of a curtain. I record this without alarm. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels. A V, 16th of October, dawn, wind south 2 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 2 nautical miles. I have today, for the first time, considered the question of whether the bank will continue to approach if I am not present at the station to observe it. This is not a question I can answer through observation, since I cannot leave the station and watch the bank from the same position, but I can consider it as a matter of reasoning. The bank approaches me, and not Pétur. This is established. The bank, therefore, takes the observer as one of its parameters. If I were to leave the station, to walk down the path to Valstens, for example, and to remain at Pétur's farm, the bank, by its established behavior, would either continue to approach my station empty of me, which seems to defeat the purpose of an approach calibrated to an observer, or it would cease its approach, since there is no observer at the station to approach toward, or it would shift its center of approach to follow me to Pétur's farm. I believe the third possibility is the most consistent with what the bank has shown of itself. The bank approaches me. If I move, the bank will move with me. The bank's distance is a property of its relationship to me, not to my station. This means that going to Pétur's farm would not free me from the bank. It would only bring the bank closer to Pétur and to Gudrun, who do not deserve the approach of a bank that does not behave as fog behaves. They have been kind. I will not bring this thing to their door. I will stay at the station. Light extinguished. Paraffin 1 3/4 pints. No vessels. AV, 16th of October. Dusk. Wind south. 3 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 1 3/4 nautical miles. I want to write today, while I still have the steadiness for it, what I have come to believe. I believe the bank is not a fog bank. I believe the bank is a kind of presence that has chosen to approach me and to manifest as a fog bank for the sake of having a form. I do not believe the presence intends harm. I do not believe the presence intends arrival. I believe the presence intends only to approach perpetually in a form that is beautiful and silvered and even, and to make a tone that I can hear but no one else can, and to be at my western horizon for as long as I am at my station. I believe this is not a thing that has happened to me because of anything I have done. I believe the presence chose me as it might have chosen any keeper at any lighthouse on any cape. And the choice is not personal in the way that human choices are personal. The bank is approaching me the way a tide approaches a particular grain of sand. The grain is not significant to the tide. The tide is not significant to the grain in any moral sense. It is simply what is happening in the place where the grain is. I am the grain. The bank is the tide. The tide will come closer and closer for as long as I sit on this beach. It will not arrive. It will not leave. It will be present at my western horizon for the rest of my keeping of this station. And after I am gone, perhaps the next keeper will see it at 8 nautical miles when he begins his service. And perhaps he will see it approach by half a mile per day, and perhaps the bank will keep him as it has kept me, or perhaps it will not. And the bank will simply remain where it always was, 8 miles west, motionless again, until another grain comes that it chooses. I do not know which of these will be true. I believe the bank is beautiful and that the sound is beautiful. I believe the keeping of the station is a good thing to do, regardless of what the bank does. I believe Pétur and Gudrun are good people, and that I am right not to bring the bank to them. I believe the inspector will come in early November, as scheduled, and will see the bank at perhaps 1 mile, or 1/2 mile, or 1/8, and will record it in his own register, and the bank will be entered into the official records of the lighthouse service. And that is the proper place for such a thing to be entered. Light kindled, wick trimmed, foghorn ready, supplementary oil at the lamp, no vessels, AV. 17th of October, dawn, wind south, 2 knots, swell light, sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 1 1/2 nautical miles. The bank is now close enough that I can see, looking carefully at the gallery, that the silver gray of the bank has a faint internal grain, like the grain of fine cloth, very small, very even, with no thickening or thinning. The grain runs in the same direction throughout the visible bank, from upper left to lower right, at a slight diagonal. And it does not vary or shift in the way that the grain of moving water vapor would vary. It is the grain of a still surface. The sound continues. I have realized today that the sound has a very faint pulse to it, like a slow breathing, perhaps once every 20 seconds. I had not heard the pulse before. I think it has been there all along, but it is so slow that I had perceived only the held note. With prolonged listening, the pulse becomes audible. Peter came. He sat with me. He asked me to come back with him. I said no, gently, and explained my reasoning about the bank moving with me if I moved. Peter listened. He did not argue. He said, "Asgir, I will come tomorrow." I thanked him. Light extinguished. Paraffin 1 3/4 pints. No vessels. AV, 17th of October. Dusk. Wind south, 3 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 1 1/4 nautical miles. I will close today's entry with a note for whoever reads this register after me, whether that is the inspector in November, or the keeper who replaces me at some future date, or some clerk in Reykjavik who is reviewing the records of stations in the year 1893. The bank has been visible for 13 days. The bank has approached me by approximately 7 nautical miles in that time. The bank does not appear to be a fog. The bank has not interfered with my keeping of the station. The light has been kindled and extinguished at the proper hours each day. The paraffin consumption has been within the normal range for the season. The wick has been trimmed. The lens has been cleaned of salt. The foghorn has been kept ready. The supplementary oil has been kept at the lamp. The register has been kept twice daily without omission. I want the record to show that I have continued to do my duty. I want the record to show that the unusual phenomenon of the bank has been observed, measured, and reported. I want the record to show that I am not afraid, and that I have made a peaceful accommodation with the bank, and that the keeping of the light has continued without impairment. I want finally the record to show one further thing. The bank is beautiful. I have written this before in the register, and I will write it once more for the closing of this section. It runs the length of the western horizon. The light upon it changes through the day. The grain of its surface is fine and even. The tone it makes is low and steady and pulses faintly once every 20 seconds. It does not move when the wind blows. It does not cast a shadow. It approaches at half a nautical mile per day and will not arrive. I am the keeper of the light at Staffness Point. The light will be lit at dusk. The bank will be at its proper distance, whatever that distance is. The sea will run the same swell. The gulls will turn at the edge. This is what I have to record. A V 18th of October. Dawn. Wind south 2 knots. Swell light. Sky clear. The bank stands at approximately 1 nautical mile. Light extinguished. Paraffin 1 3/4 pints. No vessels. AV.